Hello, alongside the dogmatic Ryan Sir, I'm Don Helbig, and welcome to the Pick Six, the podcast by the Attractions Group, where Ryan and I discuss the latest and greatest news around the attractions industry.
And the news comes at us like a fire hose some days. But before we get started, just a reminder that you can follow us on all your favorite podcast apps, Apple, Google, Spotify, you know the drill. Make sure that you watch the video version of the podcast on YouTube by searching for the Attractions Group podcast in the YouTube search bar, and follow us on X/Twitter at attractions_GRP. Don, kick us off.
Well, social media was abuzz earlier this week when Dorney Park, while everyone was sleeping on the East Coast, released the first official POV of Iron Menace, the 160-foot B&M dive coaster set to debut this spring. Ryan, watching the POV, now I thought this was going to be a fantastic ride, had all elements in place to be one of the best dive coasters out there, but totally convinced. After watching the POV, what were your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited for this ride. I think it's going to be really, really good. But on that same token, I'm a big subscriber into the idea that POVs never tell the full story, because I always feel like without being able to feel the sensation and only have the sights, they're always going to under deliver as to what the ride actually is. So I think this is going to be a fantastic ride with some fantastic elements. It's not very lengthy, we're coming to find out, but it's relentless. So I would pick relentless over lengthy any day of the week, wouldn't you?
Well, I would too, yeah. I always preferred a ride that had a lot going on with it. I often reference, Raven at Holiday World, a wooden coaster, not the longest, but packed and one of the best wooden coasters out there. And I think this is going to be the same thing when it comes to dive coasters.
I completely agree. So let's move on to Coney Island, Cincinnati as the second story. This is a sad one. This is going to be tough. But Coney Island, Cincinnati recently announced that they were going to close as of December 31st, 2023. And the land has been purchased by the Cincinnati Symphony Orchestra and will become a new music venue. Lots of efforts put in to save the park. Unfortunately, though, the efforts are in vain because currently the park is the water park at least is being raised. People made some valiant efforts. It meant a lot to a lot of people, but here we are. And, Sunlight Pool, after 90 years of entertaining people as being the world's biggest recirculating pool at 401 by 200 feet, is unfortunately meeting its demise.
Listen, I have a lot of childhood memories there. Spent a lot of time at Coney Island and Sunlight Pool. And like, a lot of Cincinnatians, I'm going to miss it. But what it comes down to is, you can respect history, but you can't revere it just because it's been there for 90 years. You can't keep it there and keep it open. We often say you have to vote with your feet. And in recent years, there were a lot of days when you would go to Sunlight Pool and hardly anyone was there. I went the last couple of years and there might have been, 18, 20, 22 people, there, and you can't stay in business, with that kind of attendance. You needed more people there. So I understood it, disappointed, sad, but understand, that its time had passed.
Yeah, I agree. And, I made a couple of visits to it. It'd be one thing if it was just a beloved pool, but 90 years of memories, your parents, your grandparents, and their parents all probably, if you're from the area, enjoyed Sunlight Pool. So I think that's a big bummer.
It is.
But Don, what's story number 3? We want some happy news this time. Where we head?
Well, next? we do have happy news. Cedar Point, they're offering a sneak peek of the reimagined Top Thrill 2 roller coaster with new video footage showcasing ongoing ride testing at the Sandusky Amusement Park in preparation for the 2024 season. They're going to be opening in May. Engineers from Zamperla, the ride's manufacturer, they've been meticulously programming the Stratocoaster's automated ride sequence, refining the motor launch system, conducting safety tests for riders, and thoroughly assessing the performance of the sleek metallic silver train. Those trains, they look fantastic.
I know a lot of people geek out over how cars look and stuff. I couldn't care less. I like roller coaster trains.
Likewise here.
Yeah. So I guess I'm responsible for bringing us back to a bummer, but next up we're heading towards Marine Land in kind of the Niagara Falls area. But reports from the inside say that employees were told that they're laid off effective immediately because Marine Land is ceasing operations. So very, very sad for that. But that park has always been at the center of controversy, and I think that could be kind of problematic for him in terms of drawing people. But the reviews I've always gotten from the people that I know that have gone there have always been that it's weird. It's very, very big, but there isn't a lot to do. So people say it's like you walk through like this big like wooded area to get from one ride to the next, which I think would be awesome. But yeah,
Yeah, I mean, that's all I've ever, you know, known about this is just all the controversy that you read about it all the time. When you are, marine life, a zoo, whatever, there's always targets on your back by these different groups. But this one
right.
seemed to be amplified and just had, just so much going against it throughout its history.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. All right, it's back to happy news. This is a roller coaster of emotions, isn't it, Don? Because now we're
It
talking
is.
about Epic Universe, one of my favorite
Yes.
subjects. But uh,
Yeah.
yeah, tell
Universal
us about
Orlando.
that.
Yeah. Yeah, they're teasing more information that will be coming out about Epic Universe. That's going to be coming out today as this episode drops. Universal's third hard park in Orlando. It's set to open in early 2025 and will feature popular intellectual properties like Super Nintendo World, How to Train Your Dragon, and Harry Potter. Ryan, you and I have talked about this pretty much since the introduction of the Attractions Group podcast. Super excited about it because a lot of times, you just see one new section of a park, being built, but this
Mm.
is an entire major theme park, and it's just exciting to see develop.
I would say not only is it a new section, I mean, like a new ride is exciting, and this is a whole park. And we're in a very unique phase in existence where we're watching a big theme park be built and the information is trickling out about it, and I couldn't be more excited. This is not the last time we're going to talk about this park on this podcast, and probably a lot more to talk about once it opens too. The rumor is that, they're going to be releasing information on How to Train Your Dragon. That's going to be. I believe that is that in the Harry Potter universe? I'm completely ignorant. No, no, not in the
Yeah.
park. I'm not saying in the park. I'm saying like it's like kind of like the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I think How to Train Your Dragon might be affiliated with Harry Potter sometime, but I also have no idea what I'm talking about. So correct me if I'm
I
wrong.
just know, Ryan, it's going to be exciting, and I really like the way the team there has released information. Just the real strategic in what they're letting out there and the timing of it and everything, and it's all coming together beautifully.
Yeah, completely agree. So let's go back to some more positive news because Walt Disney Imagineering may actually be welcoming back a legend, and that's Joe Rohde. So Joe Rohde is a legendary Imagineer, most notably known for designing Animal Kingdom of all
Mm.
things. But Rohde has confirmed his return to Disney Corporation, and he posted that he's leading a series of master classes and work sessions for current Imagineers. And it remains unknown if he's going to be involved in any projects or if it's going to be more like a contracted thing or if he's going back full time or anything like that. We just don't know. But he had left the organization several years ago, and it's really, really good to see him back. They could really use him as any company could.
Yeah, it's great news for Disney parks, like you talked about, a legend there, and it's great to see some positive news, coming out of Disney. A lot
Yeah.
of negativity, and anytime you read the different industry, newsletters and other publications, other stories online, there's a lot of
Mhm.
negativity there. So it's great to see some positive news coming out of Disney.
I agree.
So, Ryan, we'd be remiss if we didn't mention that voting is underway for the USA Today 10 Best Readers' Choice polls. Dollywood, Holiday World. They're among the parks nominated in several categories. There's a lot of other parks that have been nominated as well. A lot of these categories have up to 20 different parks that are nominated. Great opportunity for guests to give their feedback, go online, vote early, vote often for your favorite parks, and it's a fun competition.
It is, and it's very marketable for the park. So if you want to support your local park, or your favorite park, go out and vote for them. Best ride, best food, stuff like that. These are all things that, if they win, if they lose, like, they don't lose anything. But if they win, they can be like, come to our park. We've got the best food, So
Right.
that's really cool that they can do that. But yeah, USA Today, just Google them up for best theme park stuff, and you're gonna find it. So that's awesome. Okay, let's move on to the listener question. So the listener question is from Greg with 3 G's total. Gregg. Heck yeah. Reminds me of HH Greg. He says, I've enjoyed the Attractions Group and Tower Topics podcast. Well, thank you. Just curious, Don, was there ever consideration given to doing a Kings Island podcast when you worked there?
Yes. For that. So it looked like it might be something that we would do, but there was going to be a lot of different, cooks in the kitchen with that. You know, what would be all just promotional type stuff, talking about Gold Pass and those, different, the messaging, was it going to be a messaging podcast? So it just never really was something that was probably going to work. So it just never moved
Yeah.
forward. It has to be conversational. It has to be, you have to know your stuff, whoever you're doing it with and everything too, that you have to just be able to, carry on conversations and not have to, be researched on everything. And you certainly can't have it be, promotional filled and talking about passes or, ticket deals and those kind of things, because, that's not what people tune in.
Do you
So I
think
think
that
that there were
people
a lot
that
of
would
there were a lot of reasons why it would not have worked.
do you think that a lot of people that would listen to a Kings Island podcast would need to be sold a season pass or a ticket? Or do you think they
No,
listen to the podcast because they're Kings Island fans?
they listen to it because they want to hear the stories.
Yeah,
You know,
and honestly, it would from the outside looking in, you would think that people would approach us about, especially like Tower Topics, like Kings Island should sponsor you. It's like, why? Everybody that listens to Tower Topics knows everything about Kings Island. What
yeah,
needs to happen is
exactly.
like Holiday World needs to sponsor us. That would be, but
Yeah, I mean, it could be something that would be scripted, and that, and I said it just was in the very early stages about it, but it seemed like there was going to be a lot of scripting and, a lot of cooks in the kitchen wanting to make sure that the messaging, was out there, and that wasn't going to be something that was going to, be of interest to the listeners, because, like you said, they already know, where to get a pass, where to get tickets. They'd want to hear from the executive chef, and they'd want to hear from the general manager, just different guests and things like that. So it just never really got past the discussion, stage. There was an intro, for it, and then there was just a lot of critiquing right off the bat that I got, with that, and hey, I listen to podcasts every day on the way to work, and it should be this, it should be that, and you started getting that kind of feedback right off the bat, and you're like, I can't even get past the intro. This isn't going to work. So just never move forward with it.
yeah, it's unfortunate because it could be good. But do you think that they could now with Tower Topics being out there, or would it be too like crowded with having both?
I mean, there's always space.
Hmm.
They could do it, but again, it comes, what are you going to do with it? Are you going to be able to carry on conversations? Are you going to know, the park? Are you going to script it out? So I mean, they could do it, and there's room, to do
Hmm.
something like that. So I wouldn't say that,
Yeah.
because of us, they can't do it or wouldn't do it. It's just, you just got to make sure that it's fun, it's entertaining, it's engaging for your audience.
Yeah, and I, it's one thing to be knowledgeable of history of the park and knowledgeable of the programs and stuff. It's another thing to speak from an honest point of passion and to really live and breathe this stuff and being able to be natural about it. So you and I could probably read into like Chevy Corvettes and do a podcast on it, but no one would believe it because like,
No,
what
it's
do we
not
care?
genuine. It's not
You
authentic.
know?
You didn't live it, right?
Yeah.
So that's why the guys that, were athletes that have podcasts, it works for them because they played the game. Fans of the sport want to listen to them. Where if it's just two sportscasters doing it, not as much interest in it. I mean, it can work, but just not as much interest there because it's not genuine, it's not authentic. They didn't play the game.
I always wondered about that with sports casting because if it's like, and often it's like, and there's Boomer and all those other, NFL commentators, which I mean, I think that their insight is valuable. It's probably not perfect, because they know as much as they know, but if like two guys that have just never played the sport. Like, how do they know it well enough to do commentary on it? You know, like, oh, he needs to you lead with his shoulder and stuff. It's like someone told you that, or you're making it up because you don't know. You know?
No, I mean, you can understand the analytics of it and talk about it that way in sports, and just being the play-by-play guy, probably never played the game, for the most part in all
Yeah,
sports, but they can describe the action, and that. But someone that's why they have the analysts there who did play the game that can
yeah,
provide those insights and add that credibility for the audience. But you talked about where people have come up to both of us and said Kings Island should sponsor your podcast, which makes absolutely no sense. Like you mentioned, to do that, there's no reason to. But at the same time, it would make a lot of sense, for Kings Island to approach us and say, hey, we've got all these new menu items. Can we have our executive chef on? Hey, we've got all this, new merchandise coming in. Can we have somebody from our merchandise department, come on? So it'd make all the sense in the world to do things like that, or entertainment. Can we talk
mm,
about behind the scenes of what went on in putting together our new country show, the nighttime show? Just have somebody from entertainment talk about that. So it would make all the reason in the world that they would want to do that. But to date, they haven't reached out to us to say, hey, can we get someone on? Now, we've had the Attractions Group podcast, our other one, where parks throughout the industry have approached us saying, can we have somebody come on? So
yeah.
they see the value in that. And right now, I don't know that our local park here, um, doesn't seem like they see the value in us having people from the park on, but that's okay. Because we've both been well versed in Kings Island, we know it well, and we're able to do it without having those guests.
Yeah, and it's kind of a blessing in disguise too. That's why Tower Topics hasn't had a lot of guests on it, because I think it's very different from AGP, where AGP is typically better
It's
with a
guest driven.
guest.
Yeah, it's a guest
But
driven show.
Tower Topics is kind of like, I feel like it should be like us as, and just, I don't want to say industry people and not just like fans, but two people that know the park rather well discussing it. And then we bring in people, we brought in Brad from KI Central and Chris from the Season Pass group and
We had Bill
stuff.
Medford on, who did
We had,
marketing for the park for years, and
yeah,
we've had Dennis Spiegel, that can talk about, the Kings Island history. We had those kind of people, but if there was a time that the park approached us and said, "Hey, can our executive chef come on? We've got these new menu items that's going to be, at whatever restaurant in the park."
hmm,
Yeah, absolutely. I think there'd be those opportunities to do that. And it would make all the sense in the world, and it would benefit the park to do that. Um, but it's not necessary that they do that.
yeah, and it's weird because I think that going into the rabbit hole is going to be, we're totally like straying from this question. By the way, we do that a lot, but going into the rabbit hole of, we created Tower Topics like late last summer, and then coming out of it like at the beginning of this season, it's a completely different game. I mean, I never thought it would grow the way that it does and reach the people it does. And I get random people like not at the park coming up to me asking me if I'm the guy from
Yeah.
Tower Topics.
But we've both been around the park, for a long time.
Yeah,
I've been going there since the beginning and that. So I think for anyone that's interested in Kings Island, there's not anything about it that you and I don't know about. In terms of being able to talk about it, I don't think there's anything that um, that it's gonna happen that you haven't experienced. You can bring it up from a guest perspective,
hmm,
because you've been around it for a long time.
yeah.
I was a guest for a very long time, so we bring that guest perspective to the show, and I think that's what would make this different than a Kings Island podcast as well. Because if they
Yeah.
did it from the park level, yeah, they're going to want it to be about messaging, and they're not talking about it from a guest perspective because that's not who they are. They're talking about it as Kings Island. We're talking about it as Kings Island fans, as Kings Island guests,
Yeah.
for Kings Island fans, for Kings Island guests, and I think that's why this show works.
I like how we turned that honest listener question into a plug for our other podcast, but that's true marketing right there. It really is. But yeah, towertopics.com if you guys have any interest in Kings Island. We do 3 episodes a week. It's really fun. They're much shorter than, AGP. We aim for 15 minutes all three of our episodes that we recorded tonight were about a half hour, but yeah, not for not good reason. Let's put it that way. But yeah, very good question. Thanks for submitting, Greg. Hey, I'm Ryan Sir along with Don Helbig, and this is the Pick Six. We'll see you next week.